well, I'm being a good man. I'd be better in the woods than a bear. And it's like, cool. I know you have buddies that wouldn't. I know for a fact, especially if you are a young man in conservative leaning circles, you have friends that do not treat women with respect and are dangerous when they're around women. I know because I've also been a young man in those social circles. And you know what I don't see a lot in those social circles? Young men calling other young men out. So if you want to, you want to take this like conservative philosophy, this conservative advice out, fine, fine. Be the man who takes personal responsibility for making sure women no longer feel safer in the woods with a bear than they do a man, even if they're lying about that. Make it so that there's no longer a question, and hold your buddies who make them feel unsafe accountable. I guarantee you it'll definitely help this problem for you. TJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I also think not only do you have friends that have said terrible things about women or to women or around women, or acted in a way that was aggressive that may have made people uncomfortable. Not all of you have seen that. You've done that. You've done it. Let's be real here. Like guys love to just pretend that they have been angels from the day they were born until right now. No, you fucking haven't. I'm not saying you're a terrible human being. I'm not saying you haven't grown, you haven't learned from your mistakes. I'm saying to acknowledge it. This is what really bugs me about right wingers is that they act like that, issues like racism and sexism and homophobia are all just externalities that bad people, exude, and not like a societal, a societal, scourge that infects everyone. Like when I was in college, one thing that really fascinated me was a study I saw where it was a psychology study. And they took these images and they would just flash the images in front of people, and they would read like their brain, like a brain scan of them, like what center is activated in their brain. And so they just flashed random images of people, and they saw what part of your brain activated like fear or anger and everything like that. And, no surprise, whenever they saw black people, the fear popped up even for black people. That's what was interesting to me. It was even for black people because we have been raised in a white supremacist culture too. We have. And so like we're all infected by this. And so this is the problem when we start making it individualistic, that this is a bad person. This is a bad person. This is a good person. This is no, this is a society issue. And so like when you guys were talking about how guys will dismiss women's answers, it's like, yeah, because they think they're dumb. Like they immediately go into, are you stupid? Don't you know what a bear can do? Do you know what a bear is? And it's like they just completely
seen The Revenant?
Have you seen The Revenant? Have you seen The Revenant? Like you ain't getting an Oscar after this. So that's what I think it comes down to, is that it's a failure of society in general in having people understand issues of sexism and violence and power structure, and making everything individualistic. That's kind of what I think it runs down to. What was your coach?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because about you not only have seen it, you not only have friends of it, but you've also been there. My wife and I have been together since high school, so we've been together and married now for 23 years. My oldest daughter, one time we were having a conversation about guys and stuff, right? And she's talking about like, I just think if a guy is this way or says this thing or has ever done these things, like I'm cutting him off, I would never talk to him. And it was like, I'm sitting there thinking, man, your dad was an asshole at some point. Like, and so like, I've had to have this conversation with her about like, hey, I know you look up to me as this great person, and I've always been a great dad to you, but your dad has, like I remember her one time saying, if a boy's not in AP classes, like, why would I talk to him? I'm like, dad never in an AP class. Like, your dad met your mom when he was retaking geometry, and she was like in it as an upperclassman. Like, come, so I think you're right. Like it's pathetic that people try to hide the fact that if you're a man in America, the chances that you've said or done something that would be considered misogynistic, just sex, just horrible, even the things we think sometimes. Like my wife and I were literally having this conversation. She's like, "You ever think like things like really bad about people and stuff?" And I'm like, "No, why? What are you thinking?" And she's just like, "Well, sometimes you get things in your head, but like, yeah, we all get things in our head. We're like, get that out of there, you know." So to pretend that. And it's crazy because conservatives will do this a lot. They'll pretend like, you know, like sexual assault is not something that's that big of a deal. What the hell are you talking about? Like, I know for sure in college I've been around dudes who I know would have done things that like we've been around dudes where we've had to be like, "Hey, watch him, bro," because we know he can do it sometimes. For people to pretend this doesn't exist, it's crazy to me because the second we were to do that, we would easily start understanding and being way better to women. Like the second we decided, hey, we all know these dudes that are like that. I was that way one time. I said some pretty bad stuff. I've done some things, you know. If we all actually admitted that, it would be way easier for us to go, yeah, of course they would choose the damn bear. We need to be better. But you know, we just don't. We pretend that like, nah, we've been perfect. And I'm 49 years old right now. I've never done anything wrong in my life. Like, come on, you know, come on.
I like that you brought up talking to your. Do you have sons too, or just daughters?
It's two daughters. Two daughters.
So,
Yeah.
I like that you brought that up because I feel like we've done a real, like, especially over the course of my lifetime. I'm 27. I'm a little bit older than the young men we're talking about here, right? And especially over the course of my lifetime, I definitely saw a shift in the way that young girls were parented, were taught. You know, very recently, before my time, it was, you know, you're trying to become a housewife, probably, if you're a young girl, and that's what you're taught. You're given dolls, you're, you know, given a kitchen set, and that's what you're supposed to play with. And we've done a really good job of fixing that problem. We've done a really good job of teaching young girls, hey, you can do whatever you want to do. We've done a good job correcting the patriarchy on the female side. But on the male side, I think we've completely failed still. Because the reason that men have this knee-jerk, you know, what are you talking about reaction? And the reason a lot of men have bad toxic masculine reactions, especially in conservative circles, is because they're insecure. It's their insecurities coming out and being defensive and lashing out. And we have really failed to put the effort in with young boys in unlearning patriarchal norms that we have with young girls. I think most young girls no longer think that they have to go be a housewife, that that's their destiny. But not many young boys are being taught how to express their emotions, how to communicate their emotions. I know this was something that I wasn't taught diddly shit about, and I had to teach myself. And by teach myself, I mean have girls that I dated teach me how to communicate my feelings in a healthy way. And that doesn't mean to say I was being a total asshole to women. I was trying my best, but oftentimes I would end up being an asshole, not in like a dangerous way, but just in a jerky way, because I didn't know how to communicate my emotions. No one ever fucking taught me. And so when you have these young boys who aren't taught how to do these things, and they're just having these women tell them they'd rather be in the woods with a bear than them, you know what? At a certain point, it's hard to blame them for growing up and having these insecurities because no one's teaching them how to fix them. So I do think, you know, in the vein of taking personal responsibility, I think that's something that we as a society can do a better job of starting teaching young men these, you know, principles when they're young, the same way we did with women, we can do with men too. And I think that's where this all starts and you know, where it ends eventually. What do you think, TJ?
Well, I agree. I'm curious to think we want to cut this one here because this is a 25 minutes and that's so long. But yeah, so all right, but I'm going to continue on this vein though. I still want to break this to a different one. So what I want to discuss here is a lot what John's talking about in how we raise boys and what we teach them and how patriarchy, you know, everyone loses. Well, a small percentage of people don't lose, but, you know, most of society does. And this is something too, like, there is one thing that I don't like people saying when they talk about, well, men, you guys are complaining about, you know, this world. Well, who built it? It's like, okay, well, you know, the 14-year-old boy, he did not build this world. I'm sorry, he was born into the system just like you were. And it kind of sucks. So we need to teach people how to dismantle this and how to fight it. And what John said was completely correct in that how we train boys, it's you know how these guys will always talk about, well, you know, most men are good, most men are fine, it's perfectly okay. And then you ask them, do you want to have a daughter? Like, no, I don't want to have a daughter. Well, wait a minute, why not? That's odd. If like 99% of men are as angelic as you claim, you shouldn't be worried about having a daughter, or unless you're lying about, you know, how exemplary these men are. And the truth is, in our society, remember when we would always shit on China for their one child policy and they were picking boys and not girls? Like, oh, they just value their boys more. So do we. So do we. And you can see it in a lot of ways. Like, well, John, I was writing some down here in that being a boy is just better than being a girl. That's like kind of understood. And even in like the way we pick out our names. So like, you ever run across a joke I used to tell is about, you ever run across a girl that has a boy's name? And a joke I said, like, you know, if it's a cute girl and she has a name like Charlie, it actually makes her more endearing. Like, oh, that's cool, you know, and everything. But it doesn't work the other way. Like a boy with a girl's name, it's like it turns people off right away. And this happens with names over the years. Like the name Robin is a girl's name. It used to be a boy's name, like Robin Williams. Like that wasn't a weird name for a boy back in the day. But when girls started using it, men stopped using it. This happened with Robin, with Ashley, with Kelly, a lot of names like that. And even clothing. Girls can wear pants. Boys cannot wear dresses. That's just not how it works. Like women can step up to be men, but boys can't the other way. And even with like when you're shopping, you know, when you go into a clothing store, I've noticed this when I was a teenager. If you go to a clothing store, the men's clothes are usually there earlier than the women's clothes. Like if you talk the right way, because they don't want to turn away the men with the women's clothes. And crying is another one too. Women are allowed to cry, men are not. And I thought about this a while ago. I hurt my neck. And I don't know if I told you the story, John, but I had to do this physical therapy. And in my physical therapy, I had this exercise where I had to like get on all fours and like arch my ass in the air and like bend my chest to the ground, you know, basically like in a twerking motion. And while I was doing it, I was like, this is something a woman would do. But it wasn't just that, oh, this is a female motion. This is, I'm actually degrading myself by acting in a way. And it hit me really hard. That I was like, that was some misogyny that I had held deep down. But like, just doing something that's like tangentially associated with women made me feel worse. And like, that's why it bothers me too when people pretend that these, well, I don't see color. I don't see sex and gender. I don't have this like, and look, yes, you do. But even if you didn't, let's just assume you didn't. Everyone else does. And pretending that this doesn't exist is complete bullshit. I don't know if you ever run across this, Coach, in your time.
Yeah, no, I think it's always funny to me when that happens, because as Black people, especially, you know, as a Black man who's been in academic social circles and stuff, a lot of those people love to pretend that, you know, they don't see color, but then they're quick to point out how like you're articulate, or man, you're not like them, you know, or whatever, you know, man, you know, it must be hard being around all those Black people when you don't sound like them. And, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I've seen and heard that very often. And I think something else, though, you were talking about, I think another thing is the way that we sensationalize sex. Like with men, have all the sex you want to have. With women, you know, I remember for a minute there was and these are probably TikToks I usually scroll by real quick because I'm not in that age group, but there was this whole conversation about like body counts for men and women. Yeah. You know, woman's body count was high. It was like really bad, you know, but a man's body count could be high and all this, you know, and like I still hear dudes saying stuff like that. You know, I have like one single friend, you know, and so when I say dudes, I mean a dude, like these types of things. And I'm just like, dude, come on, you know? So yeah, there's a lot of that. There's just a lot of the male dominance of our culture is just, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.